Hey guys, for today's video I will cover Archer's incredibly easy to understand kit and everything else you need to reach his full potential. I'll cover what relics and ornaments to use, what cones to use and what teams, as well as how you should play him and his Eidolons. Starting off with his kit is pretty short and simple. For his skill, he enters the circuit connection state and where he can spam single target attacks for 2 skill points each. His skill damage is also increased by 100% up to 2 times whenever he uses his skill. His ultimate deals 1000% of Archer's attack to one designated enemy and gains 2 charges up to a maximum of 4 charges. His talent states that when Archer's teammates attacks an enemy, he consumes 1 stack of charge and does a follow-up attack that recovers 1 skill point. His first trace increases the skill point limit by 2. His second trace gives him 1 charge when he enters the battle. His third trace gives him 120% crit damage for 1 turn if allies recover a skill point when there are already 4 or more skill points. So how do you play Archer? For Archer's playstyle, you're going to want to charge a ton of skill points, preferably all 7, so that he can get a crit damage boost and a 200% damage boost to his skill, and then have Archer spam his skills while also spamming his ultimate so that he can recover skill points through his follow-up attacks. You're going to want to be very skill point conscious and run him with at least one character like Tribby, Ruan Mei, or Cypher who provides damage amplifying effects without being so skill point hungry, or without having advanced forwards, since too many advanced forwards won't give Archer the opportunity to max out his 200% damage bonus from his skill nor the crit damage, so you should only advance Archer forward once you can get those damage amplifying effects. For his relics, the Genius of Brilliant Stars set would be his best in slot, since it will let him shred through defense, which is not only an extremely undiluted form of damage amplifying effects, but it's even better when combined with more defense shred, meaning that if you are facing quantum weakness enemies and or you're using Silverwolf as well, this set will allow him to pretty much always ignore 100% of their defense while also getting a quantum damage boost. For an alternative, the Scholar Lost in Erudition set will also be fairly decent, since it increases his damage by a ton and his ultimate damage as well, which is also very good considering that his ultimate damage has a 1000% multiplier. Although keep in mind that the skill damage boost from the relic is additive rather than multiplicative, meaning that all you're doing is adding around 50% more damage dealt to that 1000% damage multiplying effect. For his planar ornaments, his best ornament by far will be the Rudolin Arena set, since it increases his crit rate and skill damage, even if these buffs are a bit dilutable. For an alternative set, the Inert Salsoto set would also be good because it increases his ultimate and follow-up attack damage by 15%, while also giving him crit rate, which he desperately needs. For another alternative, the Duran set would also be decent, since he'll consistently be getting out his follow-up attacks and increasing his damage by his follow-up attacks by a ton, which will help him out to even his DPS output so that he isn't so dependent on either using his ultimate or his skill, and he'll also get a 25% crit damage buff. Keep in mind that running him with Cypher, aka one of his best teammates, will speed up the process of getting this planar ornaments' full buffs. For his chest, he wants crit rate, not crit damage, since he already gets a ton from his kit. For his feet, he wants attack percentage. For his fear, he wants quantum damage, since although his skill already gets a 200% damage bonus, the rest of his kit still needs a good amount of damage bonus, especially if you're going to use his Lightcone, which is being offered at pretty much a massive discount. And for his rope, he wants attack percentage. For substats, he's going to want crit rate and attack percentage before anything else, since he barely has any of these baked into his kit, then crit damage and speed. Once again, I want to reiterate, make sure to pump him with a ton of attack percentage and crit rate, since these two are his most important stats. For his Lightcones, his signature Lightcone is going to be his best in slot by far because it increases his crit rate and attack percentage by an absurd amount. A good 5-star alternative though would be Dr. Ratio's Lightcone, since it increases his follow-up attack damage by a ton by giving them a ton of crit damage and letting them ignore defense. For a free-to-play alternative, the 5-star Lightcone in the Herdetz's shop is pretty good because it increases his crit rate and attack by a nice margin and without extremely heavy restrictions. For a 4-star alternative, the CU at the end of Lightcone is also really good since it increases his crit damage for all of his attacks and further increases his follow-up attack and most importantly his skill damage. For a 4-star alternative, the Swordplay Lightcone is also pretty good since it gives him up to 80% damage dealt, and for a slightly more conditional 4-star alternative. The only Silence Remains is also good because it provides him with crit rate and attack percentage. Okay, so for his signature Lightcone, that has caused a little bit of controversy since a lot of people have expressed that they don't have enough pulls or that they didn't save enough pulls for version 3.4. Like I've mentioned, his Lightcone is actually insane for him, with no other current Lightcone being anywhere near its level, since it increases his crit rate by 16%, which, although it is a standard crit rate buff for a limited 5-star Lightcone, for Archer that crit rate is very crucial, and it also increases his attack by up to 80% without needing any dupes and without having heavy restrictions. The only other Lightcone that is anywhere near this level would be Dr. Ratios' signature Lightcone, which even then only offers a fourth of what this Lightcone could do. Not only that, but the fact that this Lightcone is being given out for pretty much a massive discount and for a limited time, I think that if you have the money and if you're comfortable with spending money on bettering your accounts or by just strengthening your characters, that you should spend it so that you could build pity on a banner with a limited character that you don't mind getting. Although keep in mind that the increase that this Lightcone gives him to his DPS is only around 16% compared to the free-to-play 5-star Lightcone that you can get in the Herdissa shop, so I wouldn't recommend spending that much money on it, but if you're only like a couple of dollars away from it, I'd say it's a pretty good investment considering that this Lightcone is limited for a limited character who is extremely powerful. Speaking of spending money, should you get his Eidolons? Considering that he's already a free character, when it comes to pulling for him, you'll only be pulling for his Eidolons. So are they worth it? His E1 lets him recover 2 skill points if he's already used 3 skills in one turn, which would allow him to spam 1 more skill, which is a decent boost to his DPS and his skill points. His E2 reduces the quantum resistance by 20% of a target and then plants a quantum weakness for 2 turns, which is also really good since you could replace the likes of Silverwolf or at least like half of her kit through this Eidolon, while also making the Brilliant set his definitive best slot set in all contexts. His E4 increases his ultimate damage by 150%, which is fairly decent since his ultimate already has a massive multiplier. His E6 states that when the turn begins, he recovers 1 skill point for all allies, and that the number of maximum stacks for the damage boost effect provided by his skill increases by 1, meaning that now he'll get 300% skill damage dealt rather than only 200%, and his skill damage now ignores 20% of defense, which is an overall boost in skill points, and it increases his skill damage by a massive chunk. In conclusion, his Eidolons are on the level of recent characters, being able to increase his DPS by more than 100% and improve his quality of life. But as with many other characters, I wouldn't recommend going for them since doubling his DPS isn't a copious amount that justifies spending upwards to $2,000, but rather they're just a really powerful boost in his damage and quality of life. For his teams, Archer is going to benefit off of characters that provide him with skill points, attack percentage, crit rate, and long-lasting buffs, and only a little bit of advance forward. Because of this, his best supports are going to consist of a hyper carry character and a support DPS, or just not a very skill point expensive or advanced forward character. For his hyper carry supports, Sparkle, Sunday, RMC, or Bronya are going to be really good, and for his other supports, Tribby, Ruanmei, Cypher, and Silverwolf are going to be good, with Pella being a decent budget Silverwolf. Sparkle is going to provide Archer with a ton of skill points, crit damage, damage dealt, and attack percentage, although the crit damage and the damage dealt are a bit diluted, and the advance forward requires a bit of skill so that you don't mess up your rotations. Her attack percentage and skill points make up for it. Sunday is also going to be extremely good with Archer, providing him with damage dealt, crit damage, crit rate, and advance forward. But unlike Sparkle, he can provide Archer with skill points even if Sunday is skill point neutral. So relative to Sparkle, Sunday is only a decent alternative, with Sparkle being his best in slot hyper carry support. RMC will also be an extremely good hyper carry support since he'll provide Archer with the best undiluted buff in the game, that being true damage, and he can also advance Archer forward. Bronya is also really good since Archer doesn't have to worry about Bronya's 1-turn damage dealt buff, since the majority of his damage will come from his 1-turn skill usage. Not only that, but she also provides Archer with a ton of attack percentage and advance forward. For his other skill friendly and long lasting buff supports that don't have any advance forwarding, Tribby is an amazing support for Archer, for she provides him with an extremely undiluted buff, that being rest penetration and vulnerability. versatility. Ruan Mei is just a Walmart version of Tribi, except Tribi has better synergy with HP scaling characters, which in this context doesn't really matter, meaning that Ruan Mei can be used as a Tribi substitute only, considering that having Tribi and Ruan Mei in the same team could cause damage throat buffs to be diluted, and because you're going to want at least one hyper carry on Archer's team. Cypher is also a good teammate since she excels in single target teams. Not only that, but the buff she applies to enemies lasts for the entire battle, and she's pretty skill point positive. Silverwolf is also a really good teammate for Archer, considering that her debuffs of rest penetration and defense shred are extremely undiluted and can buff Archer even more if he has the brilliant set. Not to mention her personal damage is also decent, and she is skill point positive. For sustainers, Gallagher is going to be his best in slot since he can be advanced forward with his ultimate and provide skill points for Archer. After him, any other sustainer will be fine.